Hola, Panama and Sabor USA
members.
We invite you to join us to participate in a virtual experience on October 29th at 8 p.m. Megan Cline and me, Charlie Tsegeletos, winemaker of Cline Cellars.
We're going to talk about Sonoma, the Merlot Me movement, our history, and of course, we're going to taste our Cline Merlot. We will see you soon.
Salud.
Unidos por los sabores.
Ok, buenas noches, Panamá. Es un placer para mí estar con ustedes esta noche. Hay varias personas que ya conozco de la industria, así que un saludo para todos. Esta noche no puedo ver sus cámaras, así que creo que solo ustedes van a estar viéndonos a nosotros. Los saludo desde California. Bienvenidos y bienvenidas a todas. Gracias por acompañarnos a este road trip de Sabor USA. Así que salud a todos. Esta noche damos un inicio a un viaje gastronómico por los principales estados productores agrícolas de los Estados Unidos. Y por supuesto, uno de los grandes productores es California y aquí el Valle de Sonoma. Antes de iniciar esta experiencia, los invitamos por favor a verificar su configuración de sonido, ya que esta plataforma que estamos usando esta noche es un poco diferente porque vamos a hacer la presentación en inglés con traducción simultánea. Así que por favor, para que los que no tengan todavía su traducción, pueden ubicar, hay una pestaña que se llama Adjuntos. En esta pestaña están las instrucciones donde pueden descargar el archivo en PDF y hacer la configuración de su micrófono. Si tienen preguntas o inquietudes, por favor diríjanlas a nuestro chat, ya que tenemos todo un equipo técnico detrás de cámaras que va a estar para la asistencia esta noche. Así que, por favor, buenas noches y bienvenidos. Salud a todos. Esperamos que esta noche todos tengan una gran experiencia. Mi nombre es Carol Burke, Export Manager de Cline Cellars. Les pido, por favor, también, adicional a su configuración, que por favor abran sus botellas de vino. No esperen a que nuestros invitados especiales lleguen a hacer la prueba o el maridaje. No, por favor, la idea es que toda la noche disfruten de esta experiencia. Aquí yo tengo mi vino también, al igual voy a compartirlo con ustedes. Por favor, tengan listo su salami y empiecen a disfrutar de la noche. Les cuento un poco ahora acerca de Sabor USA. Sabor USA es una comunidad en torno a la buena gastronomía y exquisitos sabores que representa más de 40 asociaciones comerciales de los Estados Unidos. Por supuesto, aquí estamos con Cline Cellars. Aparte de todo, ofrecen una increíble selección de productos alimenticios y refrescos de alta calidad, desde las uvas hasta las cervezas artesanales. Les puedo contar también que Sabor USA es un gran programa y es una gran presentación para apoyar todos los productos estadounidenses en el mercado exterior. Esta primera parada, que va a ser el Valle de Sonoma, queremos agradecerle también a Global Brands, que es nuestro importador y representante de la marca en Panamá, y también, por favor, a Burhead Charcuterie por hacernos llegar este wonderful salami, y gracias a ellos también porque nos lo enviaron aquí también estamos compartiendo el salami en California. Así que muchas gracias a nuestro importador, a Sabor USA, a los participantes que proveyeron este wonderful charcuterie, que es Burhead Charcuterie, y por favor, esperamos que tengan una gran experiencia esta noche con esta cata virtual. Estamos en vivo, no sé si pueden ver mi imagen atrás, son las 6 de la tarde aquí en California, estamos 2 horas adelante de Panamá. No tenemos fuegos, el cielo está muy claro, pero obviamente estamos cambiando de temporada. Ya no es verano, estoy un poco más abrigada. Estamos en un momento de transición con esta nueva temporada que es la temporada de otoño. Así que quiero contarles que el clima es excelente, un poco frío, el cambio de verano al otoño no es tan fácil de aceptar, pero es una experiencia hermosa porque para los que han tenido la oportunidad de estar aquí en California pueden saber que es el momento donde van a encontrar que todo el área es naranja, todas las hojas son naranjas, así que es hermoso estar en esta temporada. Esta noche nos acompañan nuestros invitados especiales que se van a encargar de toda la presentación, es Megan Cline y Charlie Tsegeletos. Ellos son representantes de Cline Cellar. Megan es miembro de la familia, segunda generación en la parte de producción de vinos y adicional a eso es una gran sommelier. Y de la parte de Charlie, les comento, él es el director de winemaking de Cline Cellars. Él es el que hace posible que todos esta noche tengamos esta copa de vino, este merlot acompañándonos en nuestra experiencia. Charlie, Megan, good evening. Thank you. For me, it's a pleasure to introduce you guys to the Panamanian market. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And please, I introduce yourself and please start your presentation.
Thank you so much, Carol. Can everyone hear us?
Hello, yes. Panama.
Yeah. Hello. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. We're so excited. We have some amazing wine, some great charcuterie, and we're going to have a great conversation about Merlot. I especially want to say thank you to Global Brands. You guys are amazing. And to Boar's Head for this amazing charcuterie that we have already started digging into. It is delicious. And of course to Sabor USA for making this all happen. And, you know, it's a silver lining for this year to be able to connect with people virtually, which, you know, we normally don't do. So we're so excited to be here and to share our wine with you. And before we jump into talking about the good stuff, getting to the fun part, and please make sure you have a glass of wine poured for yourself and you are enjoying it. I do want to introduce myself. Carol, I know, did introduce me a little bit, but I am Megan Cline. I am part of the second generation here at Cline Family Cellars. And I am a sommelier, but I actually do a little bit of everything, as you do in a family business, I think. So sometimes I'm working with winemaking, I'm working with our hospitality team, sometimes I'm out in the vineyards, on sales trips, you name it. And I think that's kind of the great thing about working with a family is that no 2 days are ever the same. It's never boring. And it's great. I get to see my family every day, and I absolutely love that. I have been working with my family for 5 years now, but before that was also working in wine in Santa Barbara. So I've been in the industry, well, really my whole life, but probably 8 years professionally. which is very different than our winemaker here, Mr. Charlie Tsegeletos. He has been our winemaker for the past 19 years.
19 harvests, yeah.
And he is the one that makes the magic happen. So Charlie, I would love to hear a little bit about your history and your background.
Thank you, Megan. Megan also redesigned our tasting room entirely and handles all of our digital marketing, among other things. But I have been a winemaker. My last 19 years have been with Cline cellars, making wonderful, unique varieties like Mourvedre and Zinfandel and Merlot and Carignan, those type of things. But I've been a winemaker for about 39 years. My last two jobs have lasted 34 years, so I tend to stay put when I find a place that I really like. I went to UC Davis. It was right on the way to my favorite ski area from where I grew up in Northern California. My father is a Greek American. My mother is an Italian American, so there was always wine on the table. So there was no shortage with learning my way around a bottle of a wine as a young man. I started off at a tiny little winery as an apprentice, and I was a mechanic in college. And while I was working as an apprentice winemaker, I was still fixing up and selling cars to kind of make ends meet. And being a mechanic is ideal for working in a winery because there's so much equipment. It always needs some kind of attention.
Yes.
So I feel very comfortable around that kind of stuff too. So I signed on with Cline 19 years ago. The prior winery I'd worked for, it was a huge winery with a huge budget. So we were able to do a lot of investigations into how blends come together and what affects quality, and the skills that we learned through that research came with me to Cline, and it translates perfectly with the way we make wine.
Yeah, Charlie's been amazing. I mean, he's really defined Cline's style for the past 19 years and has really made a mark in the wine world. So you're amazing, Charlie.
Well, it's nice working with a family too, though.
Yeah.
I mean, when you can go and talk to the owner, you just have to walk through a field and there you are, or I can reach out and Megan's always available. It's wonderful.
It's super fun. We have a good time. And so I swear we are gonna talk about Merlot. I did think it was important, and I thought it would be super fun to kind of take you guys through a little presentation and tell you a little bit about our history and talk a little bit about our winemaking practices and grape growing practices, because it's such a pillar of what we do is the farming aspect. But like I said, make sure you have a glass poured. We'll go through this pretty quick. There's quite a bit of history, so I'm actually going to start and I'll show you this first slide. Oh, hold on. There we go. First slide. All right. So if you look here, you'll see to the left, this is Valeriano Jacuzzi. This is my great-grandfather, and this is my dad's grandfather. My dad grew up in Los Angeles. He started Cline in 1982, but he grew up in Los Angeles and would spend his summers with his grandfather, Valeriano, in Northern California. Valeriano was an Italian immigrant. He came to America and brought over a lot of those same Italian traditions. So it was farming your own land, making your own wine, doing home winemaking. And as my dad spent summers there, he really had a love, he developed this love of agriculture, love of farming, love of wine. And that's really kind of what propelled him into the industry. So he's a huge part of our history. And it was from there in this place called Oakley that Valeriano lived. My dad then went off to UC Davis, actually the same time that Charlie was there.
Exact same time. Yeah. I mean, it's a funny story, Megan.
It really is.
But I had a yearbook, my old college yearbook, in my office, and I was looking through there. He said, "Oh, look, Fred, there's your picture." Because his picture was, we didn't know each other in college, and we had the same degree and everything. But his picture was just one page after my picture. And then he said, "Oh, yeah, well, look at this." And he flipped a couple more pages, and there was his wife, Nancy, who was our valedictorian for our class. So we're a little family.
Yeah, and she's right there in the middle of that picture. And you see me, I'm right next to my dad. Again, like I said, it's so fun to work with my family. I get to see them every day. So I have a great time for sure. So that was a fun, first slide. It really goes into, the ranch out in Oakley, California. So this is Northern California. What's so cool about this is that it's home to a lot of really old vineyards, and this is so integral to our history. So Cline is probably most well known for making Zinfandel, Mourvedre, Carignan, and this is where a lot of those vineyards live, and they're 100-plus-year-old vines, and so cool.
Yeah, it's really kind of a treasure. People don't really know about it, but it's just south of California's two biggest rivers, the San Joaquin and the Sacramento, and it's just deposited so much sand there over the years that these old vines can put their native roots down through that sand and find the moisture. So they've lived through droughts. These vines, like Megan said, these vines are 100 years old. But the grapes we grow in Oakley in Contra Costa County are really well suited for that super warm environment. But the Merlot we're going to taste today, we're going to tell you a little bit about Sonoma, where it comes from.
Yeah, no, definitely. So like I said, he actually started Cline in this area in Oakley, and then in 1982, and then in 1989, him and my mom decided that they wanted to be in a different wine region. So they moved to Sonoma. And so moved to Sonoma in 1989, and then they started planting more kind of classic California varieties. Yeah. So things like Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, which we make, and we things like Pinot Gris and Merlot. So a lot of these vines were planted in that early 1990s. And from there, we actually expanded out to a place called the Sonoma Coast. So we really grow, and I think it's the next slide. Yeah, yep. So this is a great visual of the different areas that we grow grapes. So you'll see Oakley on, there we go, on the right-hand side, the bottom right. And then as you go north and west, that's where Cline Cellars is in the Carneros region of Sonoma. And then a little bit more west, and you have our Sonoma Coast vineyards, which are a little bit cooler.
Yeah, and grapes are funny. Grapes, there's hundreds of different varieties of grapes. Just like you have an apple, you've got Golden Delicious, you've got Fuji. Well, all those different varieties of apple and all the different varieties of grapes, they have slightly different flavors, and they like different inputs. Some are really good users of sunlight, so you can grow them in a cool region, like where we are now in Sonoma. And like Megan was saying, the Merlot, the Pinot Noir, the Chardonnay, they don't need as much heat or sun to ripen up as do things like Zinfandel or Carignan. So if you look at that little map to the right, you see Mount Diablo. It gets warm out there during the day, but those delta breezes cool it off at night, so the wine hangs onto its acid. But where we are there in Sonoma, it stays nice and cool, and so the grapes have a long time to ripen up, the grapes that we have planted there, and they hang onto their acid, which is just like the lemon juice in a wine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. From there, and this is also a great visual. You know, we would love to have you guys come visit us in Sonoma. This is our tasting room, and what's so cool about our property here is that it's full of history. This was built in the 1850s, I think 1853. And it was the old family home on this old ranch, and we converted it to our tasting room. Oh God, I don't know. We're just skipping ahead. And so if you're in Sonoma, if you're in California, we would love to have you. Please come visit.
Yeah, it's beautiful. We have historic ponds on the property. We have, was it the Miwok Indian ancestral campground? Yeah. We have artifacts from that. No, it really is interesting history.
Great. So just thought that was fun to throw in here. And then we thought it would be great to see two different visuals of what the vineyards look like. So this is our estate ranch in the Petaluma Gap, and this is where we grow a lot of that, like I said, Pinot, Chardonnay, Pinot Gris, and Merlot. And you compare that to kind of our history, which is Contra Costa, which is these old gnarly vines that are 100-plus-year-old vines. And this is such a good visual of that too, because they look like trees. They're, wow, I'm just...
And you can see the sand too. See how sandy that is? That was deposited by those two big rivers over thousands of years. And the vines can push their roots right down through it and find the moisture and survive droughts and things.
Yeah.
No irrigation out there.
Yeah. So then I also thought this was so important to talk about because, like I said, it's such a pillar of what we do and really important to us as a company to take care of our workers, to take care of the land, to make sure that we're doing everything possible to be sustainable. And so we are sustainably certified, both in the vineyard and in the cellar. And basically, we don't use any chemicals in our farming. We call ourselves beyond organic. So we use things like sheep and goats, and we use minerals, compost, you know, everything we can to make sure there's some biodiversity in the soil. And
we've got about 1,500 of these little guys, and Suffolks and white faces, and what they do is they eat the weeds. So we don't need any herbicides to kill the weeds because we've got them 3 times a year. But you don't put them out there when the grapes are ripe because they'll eat the grapes. So we put them in before the grapes ripen up, so they won't want to eat them. And we put them in there after they harvest, and we put them in there before they even start to grow, really. And they do a great job eating the weeds.
Yeah. They also provide fertilizer, which is added bonus. And they make really cute pets.
Yeah.
So
we protect them from the coyotes with big Pyrenees dogs, and we fence off like 10 acres at a time.
Yeah. So that's really fun, and I think a really important part of what we do. And I think next slide, let's see. Yep. And then this is also important because not a lot of people know that not all wines are vegan. You would think like wine is vegan, of course, it's just grape juice, but some producers will use things like egg whites.
Yeah.
Right?
Protein finding agents. What we do, and this is kind of the wine you're tasting right now, hopefully, that Merlot, you'll pick up a little bit of tannin, which is sort of the mouth puckering element that comes from the skins and the seeds. Well, that is extracted. That tannin is extracted during fermentation from the skins and the seeds. So what we'll do is we'll remove, and with a red wine, you actually make the fermentation occur where the skins are still in contact with the juice while it's being converted from sugar into alcohol. It's not like that with white wine. You don't have skins in contact with it. But we'll taste this every day until we get just the amount of that mouth puckering tannin we want, and then we'll press it. We'll separate it from the skins, and we'll do that early sometimes, even when there's a little bit of sugar left in the wine. It hasn't all converted. But by doing that, we don't have to add any finding agents. We don't have to add egg whites or gelatin or a float bladder of a sturgeon is called isinglass. So we're vegan.
Yeah, it's great. I think it's just like an added bonus, and gluten-free, of course. We talked a little bit about the animals. We definitely have those goats and sheep, and they're super cute. But we also have owl boxes throughout our vineyards that help with pest control as well. So they'll, do the eagle eyes, look for those little rodents, and it keeps us from having to use any of those harmful pesticides. Yeah. So that's great. And then on top of that, to kind of add to our sustainability, we are completely solar powered. And try and reuse everything at the winery, including the hummus from the grapes, the skins, the stems, the seeds, and that goes back into our compost. So I think it's just a nice way to tie everything together, be as sustainable as possible, make a delicious wine. Again, I hope you guys are all drinking, have some Merlot in your glass. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah, that we put in those solar panels, I think it's probably been 15 years now, and it generates essentially all of our electricity, which is a real boon for us.
Yeah, and I think, this is also something that is so important to us in, with some of our wines, we use part of that to donate to causes like breast cancer and Alzheimer's research. And, it's just a way for us to give back, another really important part of what we do. So on that note, we're done presenting. We are going to talk about Merlot, and we are going to get into it. I love Merlot. What do you think, Joe?
Merlot is a wonderful variety. Merlot is one of the, like I said, it's a variety, so it's different than Cabernet Sauvignon and Tyrol de Gaulle and a million other varieties out there. But it is one of those popular grapevines grown in the world. It's the 5th most popular grapevine produced in California, or in America, and it's behind, it's amazing. It's behind, I think the number 1 is Cabernet Sauvignon, and then Chardonnay, and then Zinfandel's ahead of that, and one more, and then you get the Merlot. But Merlot was first, to give you a little history, Merlot was first mentioned as a grape variety in a journal in Bordeaux, France, and that was in 1784. And the story is Merlot is actually named after a little blackbird called the merlau in one of the French dialects. And they don't know if it's named after the blackbird because it was eating the grapes or because it's the same color as the grape. But anyway, that's the history of merlot.
That is so interesting. I had no idea. He's just throwing these facts out. That is amazing.
The history is just so interesting.
That's super cool.
So the parents of Merlot is a Cabernet Franc, but then it's mated with a unnamed variety that they found in some vineyard somewhere. But it's related to Cabernet Sauvignon, and it's related to Malbec and to Carmenere also.
So that's so interesting because it is one of those classic Bordeaux varieties that you find in Bordeaux blends. So it's crazy that they're all related. I mean, I guess it makes sense, obviously, but how cool.
Creating this.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing is it's, like Megan said, it's generally a blending variety.
Mm-hmm.
We make our Merlot 100%
We do,
because we like the flavors of it. But some Merlots, 100% Merlots, like from Bordeaux, from Pomerol, they go for $5,000 a bottle. So really, you guys are getting a heck of a deal on this one because, I've had a bunch of those $5,000 bottles, and this is much better.
Agreed. Totally agreed. Yeah. And so let's talk about the Cline Merlot and, maybe kind of dig into this. Again, I hope you've already been drinking it, but I would love to, talk about the characteristics of this wine compared to, all the other Merlots in the world. And this is why I think Merlot is so cool, because it has so many different interpretations. You can have that really rich, plummy, overly ripe style, and then you can have things that are a little bit more old world, more Bordeaux in style. So, where do you see this one falling in that spectrum?
Well, the interesting thing is where you grow that Merlot makes a huge difference on how that grape tastes. So if you're growing it in a warm region, you're going to find that those flavors end up being like jammy. The flavors descriptors used for Merlot are everything from cherry and blueberry, green olive, and coffee. But if you grow it in a warm region, you tend to get some of those riper flavors. If you grow it in a cooler region like we do, and this is one of the last grapes we actually picked. I think it was one of the in 2018. This was one of the final grapes that we picked. You get more of a compound that has a green olive character, a little bit more of an herbal character.
Totally.
And to me, just like you were saying, that's more of a traditional European or Bordeaux type flavor. So we accentuate that. We try and keep, I was telling you that we press the grape early to keep that tannin at bay, because tannin is the stuff, what it does is it actually takes the protein in your saliva and and you might say, oh, that's kind of crazy. But so the more tannic a wine, the more readily it does that to your tongue.
So it's the drying character, right?
It's the drying character, exactly. But the important thing is when you're eating a piece of salami, that tannin cuts right through that fat and exposes all the flavors. So that's why the old adage, red wine with meat, white wine with fish, it actually works to a certain degree because that tannin is so good at cutting through the fat you get out of meats and things and exposing all the flavor all the way around. So we pick.
It works out.
It works. It works good. Yeah. So hopefully you guys have your salami there too.
Guys, I already eat my salami and I'm in my second glass of wine.
Yes, I love it. Great.
I'm sorry I interrupt you guys, but I need to send a message that I forgot in my introduction. I'm so sorry everyone, pero bueno, les voy a contar en español. Obviamente, como ustedes saben, estamos en vivo y esto es lo que pasa detrás de cámaras, que algunas veces se nos olvidan algunas presentaciones. Entonces, les cuento, tenemos, para todos ustedes tenemos un premio especial que a todos nos encantan los regalos, ¿no? Entonces, lo mejor de todo es que esta noche todos pueden ser participantes de este regalo que vamos a presentar la próxima semana. Pero, ¿qué debemos hacer para ganarnos este regalo de Sabor USA? Es un kit especial que Sabor USA ha organizado para todos nuestros participantes esta noche. Entonces, por favor, pueden tomar videos de su experiencia, de esta actividad de esta noche, fotos, probando su vino, con el salami, con respecto a su maridaje, en el lugar que están, así como ahora yo estoy ya es muy tarde, ya se está oscureciendo, entonces cualquier experiencia que quieran compartir de esta noche en Instagram, por favor, recuerden, es una foto o un video muy corto que incluya lo que estamos haciendo esta noche. Antes de publicar, recuerden, publican en sus redes sociales, pero deben incluir Sabor USA, Global Brands, Cline Sellers y por supuesto nuestro hashtag de Unidos por los Sabores. Entonces, esta noche diviértanse, tomen muchas fotos, disfruten la experiencia con amigos. La mejor foto o el mejor video, la mejor presentación va a ser evaluado por nuestros jueces detrás de cámaras y estaremos informándolo después de la actividad en el transcurso de mañana y la próxima semana les estamos informando quién es el ganador. Entonces sigan divirtiendo, sigan disfrutando su vino, Cline Merlot. Y bueno, los dejo nuevamente con Cline, con Megan y con Charlie. Okay, Charlie, Megan, you are back again.
Back
Thanks,
on.
Carol.
Okay, so we were talking about tannin, and while I was sitting here, I was thinking about the greatest way that someone explained tannin to me, and it was likening it to a tea bag, so steeping tea. And so, you know, the longer that you steep a tea bag, the more dry it makes your mouth. And I think that's such a good explanation.
That's a great analogy.
It really is. And I think this wine in particular has really great tannin. I don't find them like overly aggressive, but like you said, it worked really well with the salami.
And I've heard tannin described as kind of the skeleton of the wine that you hang the fruit on and everything. So if you've got a wine that is too tannic, you know, a hillside Cabernet that's over extracted or something, and you know, you think you're going to have to lay that thing down for years to have it soften, that might not be a good thing. So we really try and get the right tannin level so that the wine is drinkable early on.
Yeah.
It's still enough to have a backbone, but not so much that it's like, oh, that's too aggressive.
Yeah. And so, Charlie, correct me if I'm wrong, but the soil here is mostly that clay loam. And isn't that super similar to Bordeaux, where the Merlot is grown?
I think Bordeaux does have its fair share of clay.
Yeah.
And it's because we were at one time a bay here and there's a lot of sediment. There's a real hard pan. And what that type of thing does is it limits the growth of the vines a bit. So the vine has to struggle a little bit. So if you look at the yield we get out of these vines, where you could get 5 to 10 tons per acre. We're lucky if we get 2 tons an acre.
Yeah.
And the vine really concentrates on ripening its fruit. So you get a great concentration of fruit on this thing, and it's done really well for us. It's kind of funny. In 2018, we picked this thing in November, in early November. It was one of the last grapes to ripen up that we brought in. But this year we picked things 2 weeks earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So this has been a very early year for us.
And it's definitely been a challenging year. I know a lot of you know that there were, of course, fires going on, and I think Carol touched on it in her introduction, but we are happy to say that there are no more fires.
No more fires.
And,
well,
yeah, thank you. And obviously it's been challenging, but we are, committed to making the best wine possible. We're testing everything, making sure that we're not going to put out anything smoky.
Yeah, so far so good. Everything's tasting really good.
We are knocking on wood and super happy that we kind of made it into the clear.
But they keep turning off my power, so I'll go home to we're talking about a Tesla wall unit to keep the batteries going.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So what kind of flavors do you get out of this? You said kind of that green olive, herbaceousness. I get that too. And then I also get some of that like classic Merlot like plummy characteristic.
Yeah, I'm getting some of that. There's a little bit of, it's almost like a cherry or a blueberry. And you hear us use these descriptors like cherry and blueberry. We're not putting cherries or blueberries in the wine. It's just that there's a compound called esters that are the same for a blueberry as can be in the wine there. So it's in a much lower concentration, but they share those characteristics. So that's the kind of the beautiful thing about wine is it can taste like everything from rose petals to blackberries to cherries, you name it.
Yeah. And I also get this really nice spice on here. What kind of oak aging and what's the oak treatment on this? Because
this one, it's French oak.
It's French.
So you've got French oak and you've got American oak, and it's really the forest. It's where those oak trees were grown. And oak is amazing because when you build it into a barrel, it doesn't leak. It's not so porous that it leaks. So it's ideally suited for being a wine container. But I've heard it described. French oak has an elevated tannin level to it. It's a little bit less dense than American oak. If you pick up an American oak stave, it feels like a club compared to a much lighter French oak stave that's more easily extracted flavor-wise. But American oak tends to have a little bit more of that vanilla molassesy character, where French oak, I think, has a little bit more complex, a little more tannin. Like
I'm getting that spice, like, and even just like a little bit of mocha.
Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of mocha, and I get a little coffee out of this thing too. And coffee is actually a sulfur compound, or it is in wine. It's called a thiol, and there's just so many interesting layers in a red wine. And the more if some of you guys are new to wine drinking, just putting that thing up to your nose and smelling it and trying to describe it is your first step on a really fun journey to see how different these things are. And like Megan and I taste together a lot, so I've kind of got an idea when she says something is tannic or tastes mocha or coffee. I know what she's talking about. But you tasting with your friends and family, you'll kind of coordinate so you know what each other's talking about.
And I think that's such a great thing about wine too, is that it's so subjective that and people interpret flavors in such different ways. Mm-hmm. And it is totally about the journey and figuring that out. And that's why I love wine.
It's fun.
And you never stop learning, which is great. So, I mean, that pretty much covers our Cline Merlot. Let's talk about Merlot in general and kind of the journey it has been on, because it has been a roller coaster for sure. And
do tell.
Yeah, I will.
It is. I mean, think about Merlot. Merlot was so popular in America, all the way, because it's easy to pronounce. It's velvety smooth. It's a little softer than Cabernet Sauvignon, a little less tannin than Cabernet. And then something happened. What do you think happened?
I think I know what happened. I think it was the Sideways effect. I don't know if you've all seen Sideways, but they really ruined Merlot's reputation.
They dissed Merlot and they talked up Pinot Noir.
They did. And it was so interesting, the effect that it had on the actual market. I mean, we had planted, we had a huge vineyard of Merlot. We were making Merlot. People loved it. And then all of a sudden, when did that come out? I think it was
2004.
2004. Yeah. Came out in 2004. And then all of a sudden, no one wanted Merlot. And it was just crazy to see it on the back end.
Pinot Noir sales went like this, Merlot sales went like that, all because of this movie.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that the fellow in the movie, he wasn't really dissing Merlot. He was just mad that his wife liked Merlot.
Right? I'm like, Miles, you're...
Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of a funny social effect. Nothing to do with the wine itself. But I think it's back.
I think it's coming back too. And that this is kind of what this whole Merlot me movement is about, is really celebrating Merlot. And like I said, what I love about Merlot is that there's so many different interpretations of it. So it's everything from ripe, rich, velvety, and that's such a good word to describe Merlot. I think people really liken Merlot to velvet.
Well, you can make it into a white wine too. I mean, you can make it into a blush wine, since all the color is coming from the skins. If you separate the skins from the juice before you start fermenting it, you just pick up a little bit of that blush and you make a rosé. And so there's a few Merlot rosés out there too. Yeah.
And again, so there's just such a range, and I absolutely think that it's such an underrated wine, and I'm really excited that it's coming back. I think people are getting excited about it, and I know we are.
I order it in restaurants frequently.
Yeah.
Because you get a better value oftentimes with a
100%.
Cabernet, and it's a wonderful wine.
Yeah. And so, how long have we been making Merlot?
This 2018 is our 12th vintage of Merlot.
Yeah.
And it's 100% Merlot. A lot of people, like we were saying, a lot of people blend it. This is 100% Merlot.
Yeah. Okay. And
it's not big production. I mean, it's just a little tick over 3,000 cases. So it's tiny. Oftentimes
all
it's sold in the tasting room. Yeah,
all estate grown. So, you know that we're growing it sustainably, and that's super important. But what about food pairings? Like, what's your favorite thing to eat with Merlot?
Salami.
Okay, yes, salami, absolutely. And honestly, this boar's head is so good. And it's cool. They have so many different flavors. And this was just one of them, and I'm really happy.
I was a vegetarian before tonight.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, boar's head, you are converting vegetarians. That's amazing.
But it's a nice meat. It's a medium-bodied wine. This wine has about 14.5% alcohol. Okay, here's a fun fact. If you take sugar, because grapes naturally have sugar, and it's called, the measurement we use is degrees Brix, and that's percent soluble solids, most of which is sugar. So if we pick the grapes at 24 degrees Brix, you take that 24 and you multiply it by 0.6, and that gives you the amount of alcohol you have. So if you want to do a rough calculation. But the alcohol provides all the weight in the wine, really. So if you've got a big, heavy alcohol, you pick them real ripe, and all that sugar converts into alcohol, the wine can be very heavy and weighty. If you pick it real light, like you would for a white Merlot, the alcohol will be much, much less. So ours is kind of a medium-bodied wine. But pay attention to that when you're tasting your reds, too. You say, how much tannin? Let's look at the color. And gee, it's a pretty weighty wine. I wonder what alcohol it is. And you guys will just sound like experts.
Yes. Yeah, I would say definitely meat. Meat is, red meat is great. Pulled pork, love it. Absolutely. For any vegetarians out there. So this was Charlie pre-presentation.
I ate fish and chicken though too. Yeah.
I would say like mushrooms, grilled portobello mushrooms are probably a really good pairing because they can be a little bit heartier and can kind of stand up to a little bit more of the tannin.
I think the thing would do with a pizza too. I mean, if you had a pizza with it had a tomato base kind of thing, you're really not going to go wrong.
Yeah. Tomato base, and any sort of like pasta with red tomato sauce, I think would do really, really well.
It is really good with the salami, though. I got to tell you.
I agree. I mean,
any questions, guys? Go ahead and send us your questions.
Yeah, exactly. We would love to interact with you guys. So please send questions our way.
We're almost out of wine. You have to hurry.
Thank you for that. I almost interrupt you guys. Yes, we want to know what means estate. Can you explain, please, when you say estate and 100% Merlot?
Of course, yeah. So when we say estate, we mean that we grow all of the grapes. So there are a lot of wineries in California, everywhere, that act more as a negociant. So they actually buy the grapes from growers across California, say. But what we do, we're actually farmers first. So when we say estate, we mean we are farming all of those grapes ourselves and using our sustainability methods, making sure that they kind of meet our standards for quality.
Yeah, you have to own or control the vineyards, and the appellation on the where the grapes come from on the label has to be where the wine, same AVA, approved American viticultural area as the wine is actually bottled. So this is our AVA is Sonoma Coast, which includes where we are right now, which is the southern end of Sonoma, Carneros. This wine's about 78% of that. And the balance is a little further west where it's even cooler, where the fog lays on those vines, oftentimes till mid-morning. So both of those count as Sonoma Coast AVA. And so that's a state. We own and control all those vineyards. And just like Megan said, grow them just the way we want to.
Yeah. So grow them for quality for sure. And it's something that we can control, which we love.
Yeah.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Charlie. Okay, guys, because tonight we have a different platform. Everyone can ask questions, but we only can use the chat. I'm sorry we cannot interact with you guys. We cannot see you either because, of course, tonight is a different platform and the idea is we try to provide the simultaneous translation. Entonces, les cuento a todos, por favor, todos los que tienen preguntas, comuníquelas por medio del chat, ya que como tenemos un nuevo sistema esta noche para poder transmitir la traducción simultánea, por esta razón no podemos estar en vivo o ver sus cámaras. Así que si tienen preguntas, por favor, compártanlas en el chat y de esta manera vamos a hacerle las preguntas a Charlie y a Megan.
Great. Yeah. We're here for it. We're so excited to answer any questions that you guys might have. Charlie, any more fun facts about Merlot?
It is one of the most popular grapes grown around the world.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. And I think it's one of the noble grape varieties. So is there 5?
5 Bordeaux blending varieties.
Yeah. 5 Bordeaux blending varieties. It's one of those. You're definitely going to find it in Bordeaux, typically in blends. It's really fun to drink it on its own.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question, guys. How long you can age this wine?
You know, that's an interesting question, Carol, because really how long you age a wine is a personal preference. When we bottle the wine, it's got lots of fresh fruit in it. And the oak is right there with that nice coffee or molasses component to it, some spice to it. And with time, if you let it sit in your cellar for years, that fresh fruit turns into more of a dried fruit character. And the oak becomes more of a cedar box character. So it's just a change. Some people like to drink old wines that have those more complex characters. And some people like to drink them younger. So we tell them, buy a case of wine, drink a bottle a year, and keep your notes.
Yeah. I will say, I think this wine will be able to age for quite a while because it's grown in the Sonoma region. It has a lot of that acidity, a lot of the brightness that really helps preserve wine over time, and so does that tannin. So I would say like 10 plus years.
You could hold that wine for 10 years.
Yeah.
Or you could drink it right now like we are, and it's great.
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of what we do at Cline. We make so many different varieties. Everything from, like I said, Zinfandel, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Mourvedre, and our goal is to make a wine that's super enjoyable in the moment, right when we release it, but also a wine that can be kept and stored and enjoyed a few years down the road.
You bet.
Yeah.
No, that's a good question. All right, Carol, what's another one?
Oh, I have one. It's Valerie. Hi, Valerie, is asking if there's any residual sugar on the wine.
This wine, there's not much residual sugar. I think this guy is like 0.3, maybe a tick over 0.3%. So you can start picking it up around 0.4%, lots of people, but that's not much. Yeah, 0.3, between 0.3 and 0.4%.
Yeah. And our whole goal is to make sure that it's a balanced wine, make sure that it is tasting great, like you said, tasting for the tannin, tasting for the residual sugar. But I think I'm not picking up a whole lot of residual sugar.
No.
I am getting more of that drying.
When we say 0.4%, that's 4 grams per liter residual sugar. I was drinking a tea today, and it said like a slightly sweet tea. And my little bottle had 10 grams of sugar in it.
Oh God!
Yeah, so it was crazy.
Yeah.
So wine, that's not a lot in that one.
Also, I want to let everyone knows that only Cline Merlot, you only find Cline Merlot in Central America, in Panama and Dominican Republic. That's it. Because the small production, we are not allowed to open more countries. That we are so lucky that global brands can have few cases. And this is the reason that, like Charlie and Megan explained, that is 100% Merlot, that is a state, is less production, that, we only have few cases. Every year we have an allocation that we send to Panama, but it's very small production. Only 2 countries in Central America have this wine. And also, I have some text. It looks like everyone is posting now that thank you so much for sharing your post. Of course, we are evaluating everything and look all the pictures, videos. Thank you, thank you. Remember, you have to add the hashtag Unidos por los Sabores and of course, SaborUSA Panamá. Because it's Sabor USA in all America. That means you have to add Sabor USA PA. Una cosa más que quiero compartir con ustedes y es que el salami lo encuentran en todos los deli gourmet. Y en el caso de Cline Merlot lo encuentran en las tiendas de Global Brands. Así que para los que quieran continuar consumiendo Cline, por favor acercarse a Global Brands o visitar su página web. Pero no solo tenemos Cline Merlot, sé que muchas personas han probado nuestro Zinfandel, Old Vine Zinfandel, como Charlie contó antes. Tenemos Ancient Vines, the vines tienen 90, 100, 120 años, que son de los viñedos más antiguos del área de California. Y también tenemos nuestro Pinot Noir, que ha recibido grandes reconocimientos. Actualmente tenemos 93 puntos y bueno, hay muchos críticos del vino que han dado un gran reconocimiento sobre el Pinot Noir. Así que visiten las tiendas de Deli Gourmet para seguir probando el salami y las tiendas, por supuesto, de Global Brands. Then Charlie and Megan, I'm going to check if it's more questions.
Great.
I don't know if everyone wants to share. What do you think about Merlot? Any suggestion about the pairing? What is? No sé, cuéntenos por favor, ¿qué opinan del vino?
Yes, please leave us your pairing. And I think that's always super fun. And what kind of style of Merlot do you like? And
any comment?
please.
We want to hear what you think about the wine too.
Yeah.
So we want to share that we are so lucky that we can have this presentation tonight, because I want everyone knows that we, for 3-4 days, we don't have electricity in California because we try to prevent the fires. Of course, some areas have electricity. The tasting room in Cline, they have a good luck and they have that. I'm not. I just received this morning, finally, we have power in our area. That means we are so lucky that we are here with you guys tonight. But okay, I think there's more questions here. Let me check. Okay.
Oh, okay. Good.
Again, is a question about the French oak. I know you say something before, but we are using French oak for how long, and you're mixed with American oak or only French oak?
It's a combination of neutral oak, which means the barrel has already been fully extracted, and new French oak. So it's French medium plus, because really, and it's about 35% new, which means that if you've got 100 gallons, 35 gallons of it goes into a brand new barrel. That's that kind of equivalent. But so it's 35% new French medium plus toast. And the toast is important because when they're bending staves or when they're in the final phases of making a barrel, they'll build a fire as the wood sugars. And if you do it and make it a heavy toast, then you've got a taste that's almost more like a charcoal. A light toast, it's not so noticeable, but somewhere in there, medium plus, you start getting some of those richer sugars that have been caramelized. Mm-hmm. So ours is a medium plus toast.
And how long was it?
It sat on oak. This I'm trying to remember exactly, but it was between 8 and 12 months. Yeah. We generally don't over oak our wines. We want the fruit from the wine to kind of outshine the oak. So we don't use a lot of oak. Some people will use 100% new oak, which means that juice all goes into a brand new barrel. We don't. We use 35% because it doesn't overpower.
Right, and I think that is something that's so great about what we do is we're letting the vineyard shine through. We're letting that sense of place. With this wine is so Sonoma coast, and you can taste it because we're not overly oaking it, kind of masking that flavor. You're really getting more of that terroir. Yeah.
We don't even, it's kind of funny. You hear about native yeast or adding a yeast culture. For our red wines here at Cline, we don't add yeast. I mean, the berries come in with a certain amount of yeast on the berry, and there's yeast populations within the winery. So they start all by themselves, and they ferment. Yeah.
Okay, also I have another question about the temperature of the wine. I want to let you know, guys, I'm not sure if you ever, Megan or Charlie, if you ever came to Panama, but Panama have, the temperature is more than 80 Fahrenheit, and also we have a lot of humidity. That is any suggestion about the temperature for this wine?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll say something shocking. My dad used to keep his red wine in the refrigerator. And if you drink a chilled red wine, it's like a different experience. It's like an iced coffee. So if it's hot outside, chill your wine down. I mean, you don't have to, our temperature in the refrigerators are usually around 40 degrees, but you can keep it in the refrigerator for a while, bring it up, but it can still be cool. It's a wonderful experience. You people talk about room temperature, right?
Yeah.
What do you think? Or they talk about, drinking red wine at cellar temperature, but what is that temperature? I mean, it's kind of back in the day, it was probably 55 or 60 degrees.
Yeah, and I think that's typically what they say is like 60 to 65 degrees, but like Charlie said, it's actually, if it's hot outside and you want to have a little bit, like pop it in the fridge for a second and then take it out and enjoy it a little bit chilled. For sure.
I did a tasting in Fresno one time, and it was hot. It was 100 degrees, and everybody pouring their red wines. You know, they were pouring them right off the top of the table. We had ours in the ice chest, and we had a line going out. You know, we had the popular booth because our red wine was cold, and it was delicious on a hot day.
There you go.
Try that. Do that experiment. Chill down a bottle of red wine in the fridge and drink it on your next hot day.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really quickly, I just want to say I'm so glad that we're all unidos por los sabores. Did I say that right? How'd I do?
You are amazing, Megan. You don't know how my accent is so hard and thick, but you are wonderful. Your Spanish sound amazing. Unidos, we all are unidos por los sabores. Y ese es el eslogan de Sabor USA, así que recuerden por favor que hay que seguir posteando porque el premio, el kit que ha organizado Sabor USA es excelente, se van a sorprender porque hay varias cosas interesantes que van a encontrar, pero no les vamos a contar qué es. La próxima semana lo estarán recibiendo y pronto les cuento que pronto los ganadores, así que ¿qué más preguntas? ¿O qué nos cuentan acerca del vino y sus experiencias? Es muy difícil estar en esta plataforma porque no los podemos ver, así que no podemos estar viendo qué está pasando en sus casas, si están comiendo ahora, tomando la copa, si están con el salami, si están en familia, así que compartan con nosotros por escrito para saber qué está pasando en este momento. Así que, Charlie, Megan, it's something else about Cline that I will love to share is about, of course, you explain a little bit about the jacuzzi family, but can be nice if you explain why is jacuzzi.
Of course, yeah. I feel like I skipped over that part, but the last name, my great-grandfather, his last name was Jacuzzi, and, you know, him, along with his brothers, invented your modern-day jacuzzi pump. And it actually started out as a medical device, and they were inventors of a whole bunch of things, everything from agriculture pumps to propellers. Yeah. Exactly. You saw maybe remember in the presentation, there was a plane. So they had a number of patents registered, and they created the jacuzzi pump as a medical device, as like a medical massage, basically, for one of their nephews that had rheumatoid arthritis. And it was meant to alleviate the pain. And it was the 1970s. And they were like, I think that there's a commercial viability for this. And that's how you have your modern day hot tub. Yeah. And yeah,
jacuzzi's a family name. Next time you're sitting in the jacuzzi with the Cline Merlot, They're related.
Yeah.
That means, guys, the jacuzzi that we have in our home is thanks of the family, that we can enjoy these hot tubs.
Bubbles.
I really love the hot tub for California, because like summer is wonderful, but on December we have a lot of snow, and really the only thing that you can do is go to the hot tub and have a glass of wine.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Good idea.
Okay, looks like we have more questions.
Great.
Okay. Oh, thank you. It's many people that are sharing some videos, pictures, everything. Thank you, Astrud. Thank you, Valerie. You know that I love you. You are wonderful, amazing. And Ana Gabriela, Ernesto, Judy. Thank you so much for sharing some pictures, videos. Thank you for supporting all the time our program, for being here, for joining us tonight. I know it's, Rubén, por supuesto, Rubén, un gran chef que seguramente nos vamos a ver con él muy pronto en Panamá. But I want to tell you guys that always everyone is so welcome. You don't know how beautiful is Cline Cellars. That next time, next opportunity, please text SaborUSA, text Global Brands through Fabiana, and tell them that if you want to visit us, because we can coordinate some visit for your guys. We will love to receive you guys here in Sonoma. And of course, we have Cline, but from Cline we have jacuzzi vineyards too. That is we have wonderful wines, and of course, we love to see these wines soon in Panama. Let me know if it's more questions.
I think I have a question, and someone sent through, how is Merlot similar and different from other important red wines? And it's a big question because there's a lot of different red wines, but I think we can talk about some of the main ones. So things like Cabernet and Pinot Noir. I feel like those are good benchmark varietals. And I will say that Merlot probably sits in the middle of those two varieties. So you have Merlot Pinot Noir that's a little bit lighter in body, less tannin than Merlot,
lighter in color.
Lighter in color, exactly. And definitely more of like a red fruit spectrum. So a lot of cherry, cranberry, that kind of flavor profile. And then you go to Merlot, which kind of sits in the middle. We talked a lot about the flavors of Merlot. You get more of that plum, a little bit more of that secondary note character, a lot of that herbaceousness. Definitely bigger tannin than Pinot Noir, definitely a little bit more structure. And then comparing that to something like Cabernet Sauvignon, which then is the biggest of them all. So definitely has bigger tannin, bigger body.
Depends where you grow it too.
It definitely does. Like I said, it's a hard question because there are so many different.
Sometimes it's really tough to tell them apart, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Sometimes a Cabernet Sauvignon and a Merlot can be very similar.
But I think also some of the flavor, like if you're going just off of classic styles of Merlot and Cabernet, Cab will probably have that deeper, richer flavor profile, kind of that boysenberry, blackberry, where this is more plum, a little bit more red fruit probably. Yeah,
so with a Cabernet, maybe you've got an herbal blackberry, like blackberry and green olives. With a Merlot, maybe you've got a cherry and green olives, something like that. And the tannins, I mean, the reputation of Merlot is it's a little softer than Cabernet Sauvignon. Softer being it's got a little less of that mouth-puckering tannin to it. But the fun part is buy a bottle of Cabernet and Merlot and try them side by side.
That is my favorite experiment. It's such good advice. Yeah.
I love that. We have another question. Okay, someone asked that if we blend, we know that it's 100% Merlot, but they asked if it's a blend from different vineyards, different areas from Sonoma Valley, or it's only one vineyard.
From two vineyards. The about 78% of it is from Carneros, which is the vineyard in the south, which is the area in the south part of Sonoma and Napa, actually, that has a San Pablo Bay just to the south. And then 20% of it is probably 5 miles as the crow flies in what's called the Petaluma Gap. And it's called the Petaluma Gap because there's this flow of air that comes from the Pacific Ocean, and it blows through these vineyards, and then it exits toward the San Pablo Bay, and it slows ripening down even further. So those grapes take a long time to ripen up and develop those flavors. So altogether, the Sonoma Carneros and the Petaluma Gap area that we're pulling this from falls into the Sonoma Coast area.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ari, we call it the Sonoma Coast.
Yeah, and we do grow all of those vines ourselves.
Yeah.
Excellent. Is another question. What is the first grapes that you have in the vineyard, or the first grapes that was that Cline cellar start to produce?
Yeah.
Oh.
So my dad started the winery in 1982, and the very first grapes that he worked with, the very first vineyards, were those vineyards in Contra Costa County out in Oakley, and it was mostly Zinfandel, Mourvedre, Carignan, and
probably some Alicante Boucher.
Yeah, some other, most of it is field blends that were planted by Italian immigrants, Portuguese immigrants, and they were varietals that they knew. And they would just bring them all in at once, create something that they would call a field blend, and make just a red wine. And then upon further investigation, they were able to, pull out, this is Zinfandel, this is Carignan, but you'll sometimes find some vines of Alicante Boucher mixed in with some of those.
In that field blend.
Yeah.
But these vines that Megan's talking about, Fred started making these wines in 1982, but these vines go back to 1900. These are ancient vines planted in this deep sandy soil, so they're like the ancestors sitting out there, and they don't yield a great crop. Not a lot of fruit, but the fruit is really flavorful. So if you get a chance to taste our ancient vine Zinfandel or the Mourvedre or the Carignan, they're all wonderful, intense wines.
Charlie, thank you so much. Okay, I don't see more questions. I'm not sure if everyone wants to share what they think about our Merlot, or if something else they want to know about Cline.
They can always reach out and call us if they want to,
Yes.
or go to you, Carol, and we can answer questions later. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Always, of course, they have to come to Sonoma too, because it's amazing flight with, okay, I don't want to say the airline, but everyone knows that it's only 6 hours flight, and it's between Panama is direct flight. That is amazing. That is direct flight from Panama to San Francisco. And guys, it's only 1 hour drive from San Francisco to Sonoma because, of course, the traffic. But it's not too far, but always we have traffic. Now in COVID time, it's not it's a lot activity around the area, but remember, anytime that your guys wants to come and visit and explore more Sonoma, Sonoma is a wonderful region. Sonoma produce 8% of the wine from all California. Sonoma have 800 wineries. Napa Valley have 500, and it's only 4%. Sonoma is a wonderful place to explore. They have 16 AVAs, American Viticulture areas, that already Charlie and Megan introduced to your guys, but it's amazing places to visit. And of course, Cline cellars that, remember, always welcome. You can text us. You can find Megan in her Instagram. You can find Cline cellars in their Instagram with me, or with Tal, with Fabian and Global Brands. With SaborUSA too, because always we are available for all the Panamanian people. We love Panama. I love Panama. It's my favorite country.
I have never been, but I cannot wait to come visit Panama. It's first on my list after the pandemic.
We're coming.
I'm coming.
Don't worry, Megan. After COVID, we are going. I hope next year sooner because we are going. We can do, you know, you will love Panama. You don't know how wonderful. They have amazing food experience. Really, it's a culinary. It's amazing place. You can find different restaurants, different chefs. The presentation of the food, you will get surprised because no one knows this until they don't go there and experience that. People always is wonderful, are so kind, and the weather for me is amazing. It's warm. I don't like cold climate. That is amazing. But of course, we are going next year, I'm pretty sure, and I hope COVID disappeared and we can come back to our lives again.
Yes.
Okay, I think so is another question? No more questions.
All right, Carol.
All right. Well, first of all, before we leave and kind of hand it back off to you guys, we just want to say thank you so much for having us. We had such a fun time. You guys are so great. And thank you again to Global Brands and to Boar's Head because, like you probably saw me throughout the entire presentation just munching
I've eaten half the salami.
And of course, SaborUSA Panamá. You guys are incredible. Seriously, this was such a great experience.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you so much, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, SaborUSA. Thank you, Global Brands. Thank you for all this wonderful experience. Thank you for that wonderful salami that we already finished. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos esta noche. Esperemos que no sea la única experiencia con Cline. Recuerden que tenemos Cline Pinot Noir, Cline Chardonnay, Cline Old Vine Zinfandel y por supuesto Cline Merlot en el mercado, que pueden seguir encontrando el vino por medio de Global Brands. Gracias SaborUSA, gracias a todo el equipo que está detrás de cámaras que hizo esta actividad posible. Esperamos que hayan disfrutado esta noche. Lamentamos mucho no poder verlos a ustedes porque obviamente podríamos interactuar mucho más, pero esperamos que hayan pasado una gran noche. Recuerden postear porque hay un premio muy lindo, es un kit muy especial que ha hecho SaborUSA para todos ustedes que nos han acompañado esta noche, así que la mejor foto, el mejor video, el mejor post va a ganar un premio especial. Les estaremos informando en el transcurso de mañana, de este fin de semana y la próxima semana quiénes son los ganadores. Pero gracias por apoyarnos, gracias por postear, gracias por todos los que nos acompañaron y buenas noches desde California.